What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for staying up late with us. It is post Loons. It is April, actually, one more minute. It's April 22nd, 2023 here in
Not
Central
even 5
Time.
seconds. It just turned midnight.
Just turned midnight. So officially April 23rd, 2023. It is post Loons. My name is Jeremy Rushing. Alongside me tonight for the first time, his first edition of Post Loons, his first time on Post Loons here, David Naylor at Prof. Cedar on Twitter. David, thank you so much for staying up late with me as well to break down this 1-0 Minnesota United loss. I guess first things first, how are you feeling right now? Is the sky falling?
Look, if you asked me at the final whistle, which as we record was half an hour ago, I was real mad at the final whistle, which we can get into in a bit. I have that as a thing I want to talk about later in the show. But I've talked through some stuff. I've looked up some numbers, so I'm feeling it's a road loss in MLS by 1 goal. I'm angrier because it's Seattle, if I'm being honest. But that's what it is.
It is Minnesota United's now 8th consecutive loss at Lumen Field since joining Major League Soccer. That is pretty wild. As Dominic Jose Bazonio reminded me on 10,000 Pitches this week, they were actually robbed of a draw in Seattle in their first time at Lumen Field since joining MLS in 2017. That was about as close as they got, aside from tonight, to getting a result.
And 2020, the most
we forget we're
the most
forgetting that
painful
happened.
of them because they were real close in 2020.
We don't talk about that one though, David. We pretend that
I'm
one
going to talk about that game
exist.
later too. I got a point about that game.
Fair enough. But yes, it was a 1-0 result in Seattle Sounders' favor. It was David Rusnak in the 79th minute, cleaning up a clearance from Mickey Tapias to give Seattle the win. As you guys are tuning in here on the show, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a question or comment for us to respond to. We probably won't get too much live interaction tonight considering it is 12:02 a.m., but if you want to leave a question or comment, give us your thought on the 1-0 loss, please go ahead and do that in the chat. If you're watching us on Twitter and you want to interact with the show, you're going to have to go to our YouTube channel and do that. So go to youtube.com, search Post Loons, search Sota Soccer, and you can interact with the show, drop a question or comment. We'll be happy to respond to that on the air. But David, it's time to get into our 3 things. Start this off as we always do, 3 points each from the match, kind of just some general thoughts, and I will let you go first.
So my first point, which was kind of a recurring topic, I tweeted through a lot of this match on Twitter, as many of you who follow me probably know at this point. And what it almost appeared to me, I will say this jokingly, but this is how it looked at times. It looked like there was a force field around Seattle's 18-yard box, which if anytime a Minnesota player walked through that force field, they forgot how their feet worked. Pretty much throughout the evening, doesn't matter who it was, not blaming any particular player, whether it was Luis Almeria when he came onto the field, whether it was Bongi when he was in, whether it was Songbin when he came in, just stuff didn't do what it was supposed to do. Because honestly, for the majority of this match, right up until Seattle scored in the 80th minute, I thought that Minnesota's build-up play and their counterattacking play was really, really good right up until the final third.
Yeah,
it was the balls into the final third where things fell apart, because Minnesota had probably one clear-cut chance in this game. In the 40th minute, the chance that was Robin Lod had a shot blocked, followed by Songbin missing a shot high and above the goal on a deflection. It just there was plenty of space for Minnesota to attack for most of this game. In the first half, Seattle was turning the ball over in midfield. They were being really aggressive in the press. Robin Lod had several opportunities to attack and press forward, and they got up the feet. They didn't turn it over themselves. They got up to the 18-yard box and then just shot it out of play or passed it straight to an opponent or dribbled into 3 people. Every single player on Minnesota, the final piece of this just did not work tonight. You can call it lack of quality. You can call it, it rained and the pitch was miserable, because that was a lot of the passes I saw that didn't work for both teams. It's y'all are playing on a wet pitch and the ball's skidding, and that just happens.
Yeah.
But that was the failing for Minnesota tonight. Not necessarily anything on defense. It's just they could not get that final ball together.
Yeah, and believe me, it feels like this is sort of a common theme where we talk about Minnesota United's attack. They're missing that final ball. They're missing that final chance. They're missing that
I've
final
heard
touch.
Adrian Heath say this in a press conference before, multiple
I've
times.
heard him say it multiple times. Yes, it's just one of those things. It just seems to be this team's Achilles heel time and time again. It's not generating chances. It's generating quality enough chances to finish, or generating the shot that is going to give you the goal and sort of put the momentum in your favor. They lack that tonight. They've lacked that for a lot of this season. A lot of the goals they're getting are very, rebound based, right outside the six, that sort of thing where they're cleaning up rebounds. I'm hard pressed to think of a goal in open play that was actually built up and finished like nicely. I think maybe Mender Garcia's header off of Zarek Valentin's cross against Vancouver is probably the only one that really comes to mind in a goal that was actually built up to and finished, as opposed to a rebound opportunity or a set piece or a PK. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on as we move forward in the season. Can Minnesota actually build up and generate goals from open play? They haven't really shown it to be something that they can really do so far this season. If you're going to be that sort of team that just sort of hangs out around goal to clean up rebounds or whatever it is, you're going to really have to embrace more of your defensive side. And that is my first thing is, Minnesota has really gone over the last two games with Sang Bin Jong, a more traditional 4-2-3-1, where he is a true cam. He is a true central attacking midfielder, a true number 10 that is really trying to dictate the attack in that regard. We hadn't seen that prior to his coming into the team. What we had seen is a much more defensive-based style. Now, even with Sang Bin, you can say this team is definitely relying more defensive, and that is true. But in the early part of the season, you really saw this team just defend, and then get a goal any way you can, whether it's off a rebound, whether it's off a PK, whether it's off a set piece, doesn't matter. We're going to defend. We're going to keep the other team off the board and just trust that we are going to find a way to get a goal somehow, some way. With the integration of Sang Bin, they're being a little bit more intentional in the attack, which is great. But I do think that they are sacrificing enough in the defense where it could actually cost them results by doing that. I'm the initial thing that comes to mind to me is maybe you go back to a 4-4-2. Maybe you go back to the 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 hybrid that you were running earlier in the season, where Lod was technically the 10, but it was playing more a defensive style, having more defensive responsibilities. They're relying on back pressing from strikers a lot more in the early part of the season, more collective defensive effort. We haven't really seen that in these last two matches with the integration of Sang Bin, and I'm sure that's on purpose. But I actually think in the long run that might actually be hurting this team more than it's helping, considering what they may be sacrificing on the defensive side.
Well, and in regards to Sang Bin's role in particular, we're reading small sample sizes here, right? Like I wrote about Sang Bin's first start last week on the website, which you should go read. I had a lot of fun. Yeah. Trying to divine some things from what we saw last weekend in his game. So what we notice is he played 30 minutes in his debut off the bench, played 60 minutes last week, played 70 minutes tonight. So what that looks to me like, the goal is that he is not one of the players that you necessarily want to sub off in this game as Adrian Heath, that he is an integral part of your starting lineup, and it's not going to be like the Mender-Luis rotation we see pretty consistently at this point at 60 or 70 minutes of swap the striker, see what happens. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to see if that develops. And as you said, the formation question, I have been thinking the 4-4-2 thoughts myself, because we did see that earlier this season, and I'd be very interested to see Sang Bin and Mender up top together, because they've had like more last game than this game. They have some really interesting interplay that they can do, and they were already starting to develop some chemistry. So unlock that, give that more to work with.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it allows you to sort of do that and still have that more defensive shape that will hopefully get you more clean sheets down the road. In the regards of subbing Sang Bin off, no, you don't want to sub him off in a 0-0 game. You don't want to sub him off when you're level or when you're down. You ideally want to, when he's in and when you're playing that more attacking style, you want to get a goal or two and sub him off when you're up 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, so you can go more defensive with your personnel over the last 15, 20 minutes. The problem is that hasn't really happened over these first two, his first two appearances, his first two starts, I should say. So we'll have to see kind of how his role adapts moving forward, but it definitely seems like this is where Adrian Heath envisions Sangbin playing, is the number 10 underneath the striker with Lid to his right and Bongi to his left. The one thing I could see maybe changing is maybe you start Fragapane as opposed to Bongi moving forward, because Bongi just seems, he's had some moments and he's putting in the effort, but it doesn't seem to be all there with him right now. And I think it's not all there.
What I would find interesting with that is Bongi has done a great job tracking back this, because that's one of the things tonight is he was in the box all the time towards the end of the game, getting interceptions, getting what he can get to retain possession and to track back defensively. Franco's tracking back, I have not been overly impressed with in his Minnesota United career. I'm not going to lie.
That's fair.
So maybe on that same note of give and take, do you give too much more defensively to start Franco, who is probably even more attacking minded than Bongi is? So that might be the calculus in Adrian Heath's head, as you're already sacrificing something from the defensive shape you had before Songbin came into the team. Can you sacrifice even more? And will it hurt you even more if you do that? So I'd be interested to see if that's part of his thought process.
No, then that's totally fair, and that's something that he could be thinking as well. Because you're right, Bongi he's in terms of being a two-way player, he has really added that dimension to his game this year, which is, I think, been a net positive for Minnesota. But over the last two games, you've kind of seen some of the bad of Bongi show up, and the good, obviously, with the goal in the last game as well. Go ahead and hit us with your second thing, David.
So I mentioned earlier I was a lot more frustrated at the closing whistle than I am right now. They just shut up shop and went home after Seattle scored, and it was deeply frustrating to me. Yeah. From the 80th, Seattle scored, Rusnak scored the goal in the 79th minute, right? So you have 10 minutes plus 3 minutes of stoppage time, it ended up being, so 13 minutes to work with, right? Mm-hmm. Minnesota had one attack that turned into a really good free kick opportunity for Kevin Arriaga. He hit not too far over the goal. It's similar to the one that he hit against the crossbar in the Orlando game last week, I think. And that was like the only thing they did in Seattle's half in that 13 minutes. Yeah. Which what really got to me is like they get a turnover and they're passing the ball along the back line and they can't get out of their own half. Like, you have to try.
Yeah, you have to advance the ball.
Hit it long. Hit it up to Luis. Let him play back to goal. That's, in theory, one of the things he can do pretty well. And just do something aggressive. You're losing the game. Yeah. So that annoyed me. They just gave up and shut up shop and we're gonna go home 1-0 and that's it.
Yeah, you could feel the dejection from the team after giving up that goal, and they had defended so hard all match long to try to keep Seattle off the board. It didn't help that Minnesota wasn't able to take their chances in the first half or even early in the second to relieve some of the pressure off of the defense to hold a clean sheet like that. So yeah, I mean, and then you saw some heads hanging after that goal over the last 15 minutes or so for sure. Some heads hanging, man. Luis Amaria's confidence has to be at an all-time low right now. Just the way he's playing and the way he just is kind of looking on the pitch. And that's my second thing is I don't even know at this point if you can play him. And that's coming from, I've always kind of rooted for Amaria. Obviously, I want him to succeed on this team, but it's been 8 matches. Are we 8 matches in now? And it's and we're just not seeing it. You're just not seeing it with him, and you're not seeing it in a way where it's like he's playing good enough. He's just not. He's not impressing. Okay. He's not, being that DP level striker. It's not even that. He's not even looking serviceable. right now during his cameos on the pitch. And he had the counter attack where he and Bongi were just not on the same page, passes it directly to Seattle. That's probably one of the instances you were talking about earlier, David. And then a couple minutes later, he does find the ball at his feet right at the edge of the 18, and he dribbles 10 yards the wrong direction and plays it back. And all of a sudden the Loons have to recycle.
Because
Yeah.
you see confidence when a player has that, when a player is willing to take the shot. Like Bongi, right? He didn't play well attacking tonight, but he was trying.
Yeah.
Lynn Luis,
make an effort.
He was inside the 18 when he got that ball, and he had space to try to get a shot away, and he turned shoulder away from goal and went the other way and passed it back. That is a shooting opportunity that you were set up for.
Yeah.
I don't care if it gets blocked. I don't care if you hit it wrong. Just try.
Yeah. It was very frustrating for me to watch as well. And it's just compiling on now the just woof moments that we were seeing from Luis Amarilla this season. And you got to wonder where his confidence level is, and if he's able, even at a point where he can recover any sort of confidence and get back to any sort of form that's going to help Minnesota United moving forward.
He needs to start on Tuesday.
Yeah, no, 100% he does. Absolutely he does. He needs to score, and he needs to start, and he needs to get a goal against Detroit City. He needs to just find a way to hit the back of the net.
That's the opportunity here is like, if for any striker, it's you need to see one hit the back of the net. Yeah. And like we can think about last year and Omaha and whatever we want, and that could very well happen again, but a cup game against lower league opposition should be a great opportunity for a striker to actually get a goal or two to their name and get something back in the positive graces of both the fan base and of their own mentality.
No, I totally agree with that. And that's kind of almost your put up or shut up moment if you're Adrian Heath for Luis Amarilla. If you can't perform against Detroit City, sorry, we can't run you out there against Portland. We can't run you out there against, I don't know if they play Cincinnati this year, but Cincinnati, I think they do play Cincinnati. Against Cincinnati, against, some of these teams in the Western Conference that they're going to be playing once again this season. It's one of those things where he needs to step up, or he's going to find himself not getting those opportunities moving forward, or at least he shouldn't. All right, David, thing three.
So thing three, in my browsing of the Minnesota United community on my timeline, I saw a lot of people complaining about the fact that Minnesota finished this game with 34% possession, which, like, yeah, that's what it looked like. And it looked like they were playing on the counter, and it looked like that was kind of what they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I understand people's frustration with that, but I think it is a little bit short-sighted. Can I offer you some numbers really quick, Jeremy?
Oh, I would love to hear some numbers.
Since this is what I do, I had this one ready somewhat from last year. I wrote this on the team website last year at some point, and I tracked some numbers back. Fun fact, last season, Minnesota had 5 games in which they had under 40% possession. They were 5-0 in those games. They won every single one. Since 2019, so throw out the first 2 years of club history, take every year they've been playoffs or playoff relevant since then. There have been, including tonight, 28 games in which Minnesota has had under 40% possession. I looked up the possession numbers on footballreference.com. Minnesota United in those games has gone 18-5-5.
Yep.
With under 40% possession. 18 wins out of 28 games.
Yep.
And they haven't been like the best team in MLS during those years. So it's not just a symptom of that. They win games when they go down like this. The famous victory in 2000, believe it was the 2019 season, the game that Mason Toy scored a brace to beat LAFC. They won an MLS game with 24% possession.
That's insane. I didn't realize the possession was that low.
And if you don't know that, you have not been watching this team well enough.
Yeah.
He will never admit to it, but this team has always played well on the counter. They've always been able to find results this way. Yeah. This game tonight is the first game they've lost since September 2021, when they've had under 40% possession in a game. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, one of the 5 games they've lost since 2019 was the 3-2 loss in the Western Conference Finals in 2020 on this field. Mm. So, I unfortunately found that as part of this. So, if anyone can beat it, it's Seattle. But, I don't have a problem with them playing on the counter against probably superior opposition. They've done it before. They know how to do it, and they can get a result. They've proven this year they can get results like this already. This is the 1, 2, 3. It's the fourth game they played under 30%, under 40% possession this year. The win over Colorado, the win over Dallas, and the draw with Vancouver. The draw with Vancouver, in which Vancouver scored an equalizer in the 98th minute.
Of 6 minutes of stop.
Of 6 minutes added on. So arguably they could have been on an 8-game winning streak, not draws, winning with under 40% possession. Possession is not the problem.
No, it's not. And there are certain stats, and the more I watch soccer, especially at different levels, the more I sort of realize this. The way certain teams are built, there are actually certain stats that are counterproductive to those teams. If you are a team that lacks height, that lacks ability to get up and meet across, the more crosses you put in is actually the way I say, a counterproductive stat for your team. If you're a team like Minnesota United, who thrives on the counter, who thrives in being defensively focused, who thrives in keeping clean sheets and then hitting other teams and taking your chances on the counter when you get them, if you get 65, 70% possession, that actually might be a counterproductive stat to your team. Not saying that they should aim for 25 to 30% possession every single game, but there's certain ways that certain teams play where it's not the best indicator of success, as you're mentioning. And so, it's not a surprise to me at all. And, to see that, and obviously that's sort of traditional line of thinking. If you get outpossessed 2-1, you probably didn't end up on the right side of the score line. Not the case for Minnesota. So that's great research and insight. That's exactly why, we have you here. You're the guy for that. You're the stats guy. My third thing is it's simple, but I want to have a conversation about this because we were very high on Minnesota. Actually, okay, nationally, there were a lot of outlets. Most outlets were very low on Minnesota coming into the season because obviously you're missing Emmanuel Reynoso. They start the season 5 matches unbeaten. The perception changes. Now, all of a sudden, as Minnesota United fans and supporters and followers, we're thinking, okay, this team's actually got something. Maybe they figured it out without Reynoso. And now we have the 3-match losing streak. And so we've kind of hit this roller coaster. Where should the expectations be for this team moving forward? Is this team good enough to be a top 5 team in the West, like they were after 5 matches? Is this team should we expect this team to miss out on the playoffs completely? Like, where do the expectations lie for this team? Is there some middle ground there? Because the way I looked at it coming into the season, they were probably a fringe playoff team. They were probably going to make the playoffs, probably in that 8-9, one of those extra spots, if you will. That's kind of how I thought. After the 5-game unbeaten streak, I was like, okay, maybe they are able to kind of get up into that top 5, potentially, if they can keep this up. Now, after 3 straight matches lost with basically a full strength roster for 2 of them, it's tough for me to kind of pick where this team is going to end and where this team really lies in the Western Conference. What do you think about that, David?
So I would not so much look at the top as at the bottom for Minnesota's considerations, right?
Okay.
I think the expectation of fringe playoff going into the year, that's where I was at with them. That's where they're at now. Like, they're 7th and on 11 points still through 8 matches, which is above a whole host of other teams that are below them, but you don't see them at the same quality level as you see Seattle, LAFC, Dallas, who I believe they see next in the league.
Yep, next Sunday.
Who are all above them now. And that's okay. Like, in terms of the attack, which I think is the question at this point, is where the goals are going to come from. They are a bottom 5 team in the West.
Yeah.
Only 5 teams in the West have not scored double-digit goals on the season. Minnesota is one of those 5. They're the best position of the 5, but that's a fact. They only have 8 goals on the season. And that's not enough. Like, you can try to 0-0 draw your way into the playoffs in MLS. It's probably not going to work.
No.
You cannot get wins if you cannot score goals. And right now, their offense is not good enough to get wins. You can lean on the defense. You can lean on Dane all you want, but you're not going to get into the higher playoff positions if you're not winning games. So But at the same time, you look at the bottom of the West, right? Kansas City is an atrocity.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrible. I don't think Minnesota is going to finish below Kansas City in the table. The
You talk about
Galaxy
struggling to score goals.
Yeah, they have scored 3 on the season,
which is by far an MLS record for fewest goals at this point in the season. I believe at this point, 8 matches into, or I actually think they played all 9. I don't think they've had a bye week yet.
That's correct.
9 matches into the season. I believe 6 goals was the fewest that a team had scored up to this point in the season until then, and Kansas City has 3. So, anyways.
And they're the only team in MLS not to have won a single game, the only one.
Mm-hmm.
So like that fixture's coming up in a couple weeks and is going to be something.
Yeah,
they see Kansas City on May 13th, so that'll be a telling statement of where Minnesota's at as a team if they can't figure something out by then. But sure. You have them, you have the Galaxy, who have been in complete shambles kind of the entire season, other than playing LAFC.
Yeah, somehow.
You have Colorado, who took a point off LAFC tonight, but have been kind of bad. You have Austin, who we expect to be better than this. And you have Portland, who looked like garbage until they beat Seattle last week.
Yeah.
So, to a certain point, does Minnesota have more upside than most to all of the current bottom 5 teams in the West?
Probably.
You can be optimistic and say, like, if they can figure out how to score goals, there's no world where they should finish worse than 9th.
Mm-hmm.
It's MLS, so it's not going to be that simple. But, like, with how some of these teams have started and how disjointed some things appear, they should be able to get results against the teams that they should be better than. And a result like tonight, Seattle is a perennial playoff team, is second in the West, is 6-2-1 on the season so far, and you're playing at their place where you haven't won in 100 years. Yeah. Like, it's a loss. It happens. This is part of the game. Now, if you start seeing they see Dallas next, but then you have Kansas City, Portland, Austin, all in the month of May. They're all on the road, but those are all teams you should be better than, right?
Correct.
Like,
and Minnesota's been really good on the road up until tonight.
Up until tonight. But that's where you need to start having some different expectations. Is like tonight, yeah, you lost to a better team. The win over St. Louis on the road looks like a really, really quality win on the road right now.
Yeah.
Because City is really good.
Yeah.
So now you need to go beat the bad teams. Like, that's what is going to be the defining part of this season, as it is so much of the time for Minnesota, is you can get results against the good teams all you want. You must take care of business against the teams that you should be better than.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it too. When you look at some of those bottom tier teams, it's, Minnesota definitely seems structurally now is, as the roster stands, better than those teams. But then you look at where they could be organizationally in a few months when you hit the summer transfer window. Do they potentially have 2 potential DP slots that they could fill at that time with whatever happens with Emmanuel Reynoso, and do they buy down Luis Samaria at that point too, which they can definitely do. So there's things they can do to even improve the team further as they go on in the season. So there's room for optimism there in terms of the expectations side as well. Let's get to a few questions and comments coming in. I appreciate everybody interacting with us late night here. Chris Alphaby says, pretty typical Minnesota United game for this year. A few promising moments that weren't high danger, that didn't go in. Random brain fart by defense leads in goal, and boom, they lost. Yeah, look, I think that's kind of what we've been getting to. They haven't gotten enough in the attack to withstand a blinking moment from the defense. And that's what we got tonight. And that's what we've got in the last 3 matches. You've had 2 straight matches where the opposing team had 2 shots on goal and they both went in. And then you have tonight where you defend your ass off for 78 minutes, and a poke away clearance just finds the foot of an oncoming Rusnak. All credit to him for the effort play to get to that loose ball first. But I mean, it was already kind of half cleared, and then he, comes on the run and puts the ball away.
I'm also going to say, I think Dane's going to be kicking himself that he didn't get all the way down for that. He read it right.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. But that's to say, this defense has blinked, and they're at the point right now where the attack has been so just disjointed and so lacking in production that the blink has cost them matches. And you shouldn't necessarily be trusting your defense so much to a point where they can't just blink once and all of a sudden you're not getting anything out of the match.
If you think back to this point last year, the exact same thing was happening, except we were focusing on Dane St. Clair instead of the defense, because Dane saved their bacon over and over and over and over in April and May last year. And they got points and they got results because of it.
Mm-hmm.
He's playing an otherworldly game now, which means they're losing games, which is normal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not good, but it's normal when you set up and can't score.
Correct. Dave Stevens says this is popular opinion, but SBJ looked good. Is there any chance we'll see him as the 9 and he's 4-2-3-1 or with Mender Amaria and a 4-4-2? Look, I like the question, Dave. That's a question we've had as well. That's a question, obviously, I think we've already addressed to some level in this episode, but it seems like Heath is pretty steadfast in making him the 10 in the 4-2-3-1. And I don't know what would have to happen in order for him to change that opinion or change that mindset. But I mean, this Minnesota United team has always been, from a coaching standpoint, player very much keep their cards close to the chest in terms of what they're going to do and what they're going to roll out on match days. They have closed down practices sometimes where we're like, really, you're going to close down a practice on like a Tuesday ahead of a Saturday game? They're very much, they don't want people seeing or knowing what they're going to do. Adrian Heath has told us numerous times in midweek press conferences that Sang-Bin Jong is a 10 on this team. That shows you kind of where he sees Sang-Bin lying and kind of where maybe he doesn't see him fitting in other spots.
Right. And it's like the question reads differently if what do I expect them to do and what do I wish they would do? Yeah, right. Correct. Like I want to see the 4-4-2 just to see how it would work. I don't think it's going to happen. Because that's the other, like the flip side of this with Heath and his cards close to the chest is he can say that. If you look at the numbers from his entire Minnesota United coaching career, he's played 4-2-3-1 probably 85% of every game they've set up in. Doesn't matter who the personnel are, doesn't matter who's available. It's 4-2-3-1 every single week.
Yep.
There have been exceptions because of injuries. They played some 4-3-3, they played some 3-5-2, and they played the little bit of 4-4-2 they played earlier this year. But it's 4-2-3-1 every single time.
Yeah, he goes with what he knows. He goes with what has gotten him to the dance, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And you do at some level have to credit him for being consistent and staying with, the players know exactly what's expected of them. They know exactly where they're going to be. They know exactly what the formation is. They know exactly what their responsibilities are. There is something to be said for that. And I do think at some level that has been a net positive for this team over the last 4 years in terms of the 4 straight playoff appearances. But maybe that's also hampered them in terms of not being able to get to that next level outside of those two. We're going to get back into the, breaking down the match in just a minute, but it's time to shout out our friends over at Golaco Kits, Golaco kits.com. And when you use code Loons at checkout, LOONS, you get 15% off. And what do you get 15% off of? A wide selection of unique vintage jerseys. No, you can't get the 2023 MLS, Minnesota United Northern Lights kit at GolacoKits.com, but you can get your hands on maybe a 2015 NASL era Minnesota United jersey or two. Unique and vintage jerseys is what they specialize in, guys, and they have a huge selection of those. National teams, Premier League clubs, clubs across Europe, Major League Soccer, lower league clubs, you name it, they've got it at Golaco Kits. My favorite thing to do is just go to GolacoKits.com and just kind of play around, as I imagine David is doing right now. And you just sort of check out what they've got on the site. Search your favorite team, search a random club, doesn't matter, and see what they have. It's not just jerseys. They have apparel. They have jackets. They have just various team apparel as well. They also have some like mystery boxes as well, where you can pay a certain amount to get a mystery box. It'll come with a jersey, a scarf, and a couple of other items. It's very, very cool. And again, when you use that code Loons, you get 15% off at checkout. Very, very cool. David, I see you avidly looking at your computer screen. Are you on the site right now?
I found we got the 2006 LA Galaxy style before they changed the badge. That's like
Yeah.
You want to talk about like MLS 1.0 stylings? They got that. You got some Miami fusion in there.
Oh yeah.
Like it's if you go way back before Minnesota United was even a thought, including the NASL edition, by the way. There's some stuff back there, and that's just looking at the USA section. So
Yeah.
I need to not look at this with my credit card in reach. I'll put it that way.
No, please do, and use that code Loons at checkout.
That's
David.
right.
GolassoKits.com, code Loons gets you 15% off. Check them out. Big thanks to our friends at Golaco Kits for supporting what we're doing here on the Post Loons post game show and the 10,000 Pitches podcast. If anybody's got any more questions or comments, we will stick around for just a few more minutes. It is 12:35 a.m. on the Central Time, so we are going to wrap this up in just a few minutes. But David, we have a Detroit City U.S. Open Cup match on Tuesday. We've sort of briefly touched on that a little bit. The team's actually going to be traveling straight from Seattle to Detroit tomorrow. Adrian Heath confirmed that there will be a handful of MNUFC 2 guys on the roster. Considering how thin this team already is, you would expect that in a normal circumstance, but considering they had less bench players than they were allotted tonight against Seattle, that's going to be huge. Emmanuel Iwe, Zaydan Bello, Britton Fisher will still be with the first team for that one as well. Devin Paddleford will be there as well. So a handful of twos guys on Tuesday. And then you turn around and you welcome FC Dallas and an in-form FC Dallas team to Allianz Field next Sunday. What do you want to see from this team? What does this team need to show you over the next 8 days, David? As we look at these two matches.
In regards to the Open Cup game, I would like to see more of Emmanuel Iwe. I have greatly enjoyed the bits that I have seen of him when he got to cameo in an MLS match.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which game that was, but I like the bits that I've seen there. And I think him getting some more exposure and some more time with the first team could be really good for his development.
Yep.
I said earlier, Luis Amarilla should start this game, and I expect to see him score.
Yep.
Like, expect, not want.
Yeah.
Like, he should
in open play too, not from a PK, in open play.
Not a PK. Yep, that's right. So, like the twosies guys, I'm excited for. Like, but if Luis plays some is Paddleford a striker? My twosies knowledge.
He's a defender.
He's a defender. Okay, yeah. My twosies knowledge is not what it should be. But yeah, so Iwe is the name that I know, and will be excited to see. I'll be interested to see if any of the people that were unavailable tonight are available for that game. I know Brent Coleman was not available for this game due to a family matter. Will Trapp was unavailable for this game due to injuries.
Due to personal issues as well. And we were given no timeline in the post-game press conference on, when Kamar could return to the team. His mother is dealing with a health issue, so that's sort of his, takes precedent, obviously, as it should for him right now back in Jamaica. Will Trapp tweets
no expectations for any of those guys, but it's just one of those, a consideration when you're dealing with a little bit of fixture pile up. I wouldn't expect to see any of the players that started tonight start in this game at the very least.
Yeah. Maybe saying Ben to get his fitness, keep his fitness up, because he did play 10 more minutes tonight.
Well,
so
maybe he's a guy you want
to
save him for playing his full allotment of minutes on Saturday in a double game week, or do we want to focus on getting the fitness up and use him off the bench in the Dallas game?
Yeah,
because the Dallas game is big, and the fact that the Loons haven't gotten a win at home yet this season.
Correct.
And doesn't feel great.
No, it doesn't.
Dallas is good, but they need to come out strong and with best possible 11 for Saturday. So I love the Open Cup. I don't want them to tank the Open Cup, but I would expect to see a lot of reserves in the Open Cup because the Dallas game is huge.
Yeah, no, the Dallas game is, and it's an interesting follow-up to their opener in Dallas as well, because we saw how they played in the opener in Dallas. It was that 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 hybrid, Lud as the third defensive midfielder, if you will. as the 10, so to speak, but now they're playing again that more attacking style where maybe they're sacrificing more in the defense. And this is an FC Dallas attack that has seemed to find their form after waiting more than a year to try to find their form. They seem to be kind of clicking right now. So it'll be really interesting to see if Minnesota can up their game and follow up that win at Dallas with something similar at Allianz Field on Sunday. Quick programming alert, no post Loons following Detroit City on Tuesday. We will have it though after FC Dallas on Sunday. And that'll do it for post Loons this week. Big thanks to David Naylor for staying up late and jumping on. Big thanks to everybody else who's watched and contributed and listened and did whatever, stayed up late with us, or whether you're watching or listening after the fact. We very much appreciate it. Check us out at sotasoccer.com. Support our work at patreon.com/sotasoccer. And while you're on the YouTube channel, guys, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not, and tap that bell to be notified whenever we drop a new episode or a new video on the YouTube channel. And if you're watching on Twitter, give us a retweet, give us a follow, give us a like, help us out in those ways as well. For David Naylor, I'm Jeremy Rushing. This has been Post Loons, and we will follow up with you next Sunday after Loons and FC Dallas at Allianz Field. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.